The following is a conversation with Jim MacLennan. Jim is an author, he's a thought leader, and he's an expert at applying digital ideas to business problems. And now, my conversation with Jim MacLennan. So, Jim,
Yeah.
welcome to the show.
Thank you, Paul. It's great to be here.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, for those of us, I mean, I know you, but for those who do not know you, give us a little bit about your story.
Oh, the long one and the short one. Okay, well, I'm building my own business. It's great fun. I've been through, 25, 30 years of corporate and built a nice career and came to a decision that, hey, it's time to sort of do something different. I actually started off in a small software company. I want to get back to that. And so as an interim step, I'm doing some consulting and I'm, learning all about business development and sort of building a business. Now it's around digital strategy or applied digital strategy. It's not McKinsey. It's not Accenture. It's not the highfalutin stuff. Really practical way of thinking about digital, how it applies to your business, how you truly create value. Hence my interest in in Paul and your stuff, and then help to help companies actually make that come true. Most people overcomplicate it. It's a lot simpler than it should. It's a lot simpler than most people make it out to be.
Right. Nice.
So
Excellent.
yeah, that's what I'm working on.
Good. And we want to talk about your book. But first,
You do.
yeah, signature question. So, Jim MacLennan, communicating value is hard. True or false?
Uh, I actually don't think I think it's false. It is
Good.
not hard if you have a simple way to do it.
Yep.
And I guess it's two things. If you have a framework, if you have a simple way to sort of tee up creating value, and if you are willing to have the tough conversation and be specific.
Mm-hmm.
So it's conceptually it's not a tough conversation. Everybody wants to understand where the value is, but so you have to help them, and you can't beat around the bush, and you can't be very if this and if that. You got to be specific and identify where that is. I guess the hard piece of the conversation is how do I communicate the value of an e-commerce implementation that's going to generate incremental 10 million bucks a year? Easy. How do I communicate the value of a cybersecurity investment that is going to cost you $1 million a year? And success means nothing happens. So how do you quantify risk or risk management? There's ways to do that. And if you have the method, then the communication is pretty straightforward. It's not a politically difficult conversation to have.
Right. Awesome. Thank you for that. And now, really curious about your book. Tell us a little bit about kind of what led up to your book and what it's all about, who's it for, stuff like that.
Well, thank you for asking me that, Paul. I appreciate it very much. The book is called Don't Think So Much, Simpler Approach to Digital Transformation. And the really important thing about the book is that it makes the point that your digital transformation, your digital business has to include people, has to really leverage people and understand how they're impacted. I mean, the simple framework in the book for understanding a digital business, 5 simple components. Systems and processes designed to automate internal operations, bring you closer to your customers, and even information now becoming part of the products and services that you sell. The 4th one is data, and it's not necessarily how you integrate it and how you get information out of the data. It's really how your team understands their role, because there's a number of roles in getting the information out. And do they really use the information to make business decisions? And then, as I mentioned, the 5th component is people and how you incorporate them in the design of the change and how you make these systems people-centric. I mean, we're talking about the people who run your internal processes, who connect directly with your customers, and who manufacture the products that you sell. They're the human component of a digital transformation is quite probably the most important thing, and that's got to be part of it. 5 simple parts, and then it talks about different ways that your existing teams can share their strengths and drive your digital transformation. So yeah, check it out if you have a chance. I appreciate that.
Hold the book up again, and I want to ask you, so how did you start the book? I mean, writing a book is a huge feat. And what was the spark, and what was the beginning of, hey, I'm going to make a book?
Well, the spark was actually, in some ways, very utilitarian. I wanted to. This was while I was still a corporate exec, and I wanted to get more speaking opportunities outside of the company. And I finally had one too many people tell me that, hey, a great way to get speaking opportunities is write a book. And so now I'm an expert. But really the bigger sort of impetus for it is I've been writing on in my personal blog and publishing for years. I got about 10 years of stuff out there, and there's some of those pieces in that book. And then really this was a repeating question I kept on hearing. Hey, we're all overcomplicating this. It's kind of like your ideas around value. We're all overcomplicating this. There's a simple way to look at this. There's a simple way to understand this buzzwordy thing, and it's not technology first. So I wanted the ability to sort of have that in a nice compact form. And quite frankly, it was a really interesting process. The mechanics of putting a book together and the process you have to go through to get it actually published and things like that. And so it was a little bit of a hobby technologist kind of thing. What does it take to publish a book? And leveraging the fact that I already like to write and utilitarian, hey, it should drive my speaking business.
Nice. Awesome. Well, thank you. So your speaking business, you've been doing that for a while, right?
Well, I've been doing public speaking for a while, absolutely. Mostly pro bono, actually the vast majority of it. And then, last year I started, hey, let's, make this a thing where I can, make a few bucks type thing. And I was able to get a couple of those kind of gigs. And then COVID hit, of course. And so I've had to do a bit of a pivot. And I've been doing a couple of webinars instead where I haven't done one of those things where you stick a webinar out there and say, hey, pay $50 and check it out. Right. It's more, doing virtual events where there's one coming up in October. I put it out on my website now. The event is in October, but I taped my session, actually last week. Okay. And a lot of interesting technology things there, but actually these virtual conferences and things, they are really actually pretty effective, and to watch them being put together behind the scenes is pretty fun.
Right. And then it's interactive too. So even though you recorded some stuff beforehand, you can still interact with your audience during the event, right?
Yeah. I don't know if I'm going to do that or not. They said do 20 minutes or 25, no interaction. And I'm sort of double booked on the day of. And so I either have to undo that but yeah, to your point, they've got it all set up with, pick your favorite collaboration tool that for every one of the sessions, they can actually tack on another 5 minutes and have an interactive session with the speaker. So yeah, I might do that, but I don't know yet.
Cool. Nice. And so what are you kind of most excited about? What's, besides that coming up, what are you working on?
Well, I'm doing a podcast. Sort of, you've inspired me. I've got to get on my my horse here and do a podcast. So a lot of different ways to do content. I would say that my reaction to the COVID was, since business started drying up in the second quarter, I did a pivot towards content. But really, as of mid-August or the 1st of September, I can see things starting to open up. It's still a little depressed, and people are waiting for November to start making, investments and things based on where things go. But business is starting to open up, and I'm starting to do more sort of traditional biz development, either directly with companies or with partner firms that have a lot of capacity in their fulfillment arms, and they want someone to help their customers understand, the fundamental why of what they're doing.
Right. That's cool. Wow. All right. So going back to your book, I was curious, Do you have any success stories, comments from readers, or stories about how you apply the stuff from the book and what happens?
Sure. The biggest feedback I get from readers is, hey, it's nice you've made it, sort of straightforward and simple, but you're also pulling in well, in a sense, you're giving us permission to go forward, because there's a lot of folks that in their businesses are trying to sort of say to themselves, well, I understand there's buzzwords. I hear this a lot, but the world overcomplicates it. Can you just give me a simple path? And that works great for most businesses, most conservative businesses. I mean, if you're a B2C company, if you're already doing digital products, this is no-brainer stuff. But if you have a traditional company and this is a big change for you, for your culture, for the structure of your business, it seems a little bit scarier. And then what's in the book and what people have reacted to is, hey, there's big sections in there that say, well, how do I take what I already know and apply it to this new world? And how does finance win? And how does R&D win? And how does IT, get that seat at the table and win? And sort of making it practical and making it accessible is the thing. Another thing is that, and some examples too, people would say, well, give me an example of how my projects currently fit in, because I'll point out the fact that most projects currently fit into the framework. For example, the systems and processes around internal operations. Yeah, that's your ERP system, but it has connections to everything. So how does that connect to your customers? Well, do we have accurate data about them? Does it drive our CRM? Is it integrated with our CRM? Are we listening to the signals back? And do we understand how to use the software to optimize the supply chain, for example? Or do we just sort of pull the switches and fill out the forms that I was told how to do? I don't know. I know how to do my job, but I don't really understand my job. And it helps sort of call that out. You can have truly transformational impact if you just understand better the tools you already have.
Right.
And I also go into the Internet of Things and, the trigger event that to me really started the whole concept of digital transformation, which is now products can be part of, it can be digital. So now, the digital world has impacted, what your product is, how you connect with your customer, and how you fulfill and connect and sort of make and ship your orders. I mean, that's pretty much all there is, right? And IoT sort of went over the took everything over the line. So now everything can be digital, and to make that area of digital more accessible, there's a lot of stuff in there about IoT.
Right. You mentioned the power of simplicity in the title of your book. Talk about that, because that's fascinating.
Oh, sure. Because typically when somebody shows you, especially the really big, expensive consulting folks, shows you that, so this is the digital transformation roadmap. It's loaded with technology that most people barely understand, including traditional IT folks. And there's an awful lot of pictures and words and flows and things, and they just massively overcomplicate it. And the truth is, it's a lot simpler. It's just these 5 simple components, and really it's just a question of picking your level of abstraction. It's a nice, comfortable abstract level. You can see the different pieces. You can fit pretty much all your stories into it, because now once you understand, all that framework does is say, how can I understand what digital transformation is, and at a high level, how it applies to what my company does. It doesn't talk about, and maybe this is an idea for either an update for the book or a second book, it doesn't talk about why. It's not a book on strategy, it's about tactics. And but it helps you understand the question, what am I talking about? Because the second question could be, well, why do I care? And that's where we get into this conversation of creating value, how you actually create value. And now I'm off the book and into things I've been writing since then on my website. But it's and the stuff you talk about, you have to have a way of simple framework to understand how to talk about creating value. and defining value that people actually care about.
Right. It's like the glue or the bridge or because yeah, you can have all this value over here, but it's behind this communication wall, right?
Oh yeah.
Extra work to translate that because A, you're simplifying the value message, but B, you're picking your audience you're communicating it to so that you're really going to have different messages to different audiences about the same thing, behind the communication wall. I just made that up, but yeah, but that's like extra work, right?
I like the idea of a communication wall. I think it also could be called some sort of communication sort of barrier
Right.
but I'm thinking more like a steeplechase or something like that. If you think about it, go back 100 years, I don't know how long, go back 100 years and try to explain to someone how a car works right now.
Right.
Even what a car is. And it's magic. It'll be like, I have no idea what you're talking about. You can't run faster than the horse. It's not possible. Massively complicated to try to educate someone about that, or massively difficult to educate somebody about that. But once you do, fast forward to now, people just understand how cars work and what they do for you just walking into them. And so is that really a challenge of communication or education? I think it's a little bit of both, right? You have to take it. Yeah, that's a pretty good one, wasn't it? Yeah, you have to take an interesting topic and say, this is why you care, and here's a simple way for you to understand it. Right. But then it's just pure education.
Yeah. And I mean, and education, outside of traditional education, right? The selling point for traditional education, grade school, high school, college, is you have to, or you're not going to get a job that's good enough if you don't go to this or that. But beyond that,
same thing with digital. I would argue that same thing with digital. It's very much getting to the point where, you can actually, create better opportunities for yourself with the right kind of digital education. Everybody talks about a huge sort of unemployment problem we have, but we also have a huge problem. A lot of companies have a huge problem of getting enough people that have the right skills to be able to take advantage of all this technology that's in data or information that's in front of us.
Right.
So it's really, it is a thing of, hey, if we just had the education, we could have the brains in here to actually make awesome things happen, top line and bottom line. So it's, it's all sort of tied together.
Wow. So communicating value and educating about value.
Yeah.
Where
I think value, it's funny, value in and of itself is a complicated word because it has its soft meanings, but you can even reduce that by one syllable and just say why. If people understand why we're doing something, and have it a really impactful why, not just because we should, or hey, look at this really cool technology, that's why we're doing it. No, that's not impactful. You're doing it to create, some good, something that, what are you trying to do with this organization of people? Are you trying to make money? Then this helps you make money. Are you trying to save money? Then this helps you save money.
Right.
Just to get people's attention. And then, they're going to want to know specifics.
Right. And how about this? How about the right why will allow people to line that up with 5 other whys?
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Oh, and
if they have the right why for each one of those 5 things, it'll be easy to pick, depending on what's going on and what they want to accomplish.
Right. If folks, I think it's fascinating if folks just understand that, you have to be able to communicate the value, the reason why. Why are we doing this? Why are we even considering doing this?
Right.
And figuring out great ways to do it, simple ways to do that. Because we see this every day. We all see this. When people come in, either internal to the company, IT comes to the finance and says, we should do this. Why? Because it's this new piece of technology. Even people come to IT and say we should do something. Why? Because it's this new technology, great technology. Right. And everybody thinks that because the technology is new or cool or something like that, that's the reason why we should do something. No. The technology is the how.
Right.
The technology is how we're going to do something. But the real question is, why should we do anything in the first place?
Right. Because
And
there's limited,
people, once people realize that, then we
yeah,
get to value.
right, because you're limited by the resources that you have to take advantage of the whys, or to,
Yeah,
right? You can only handle so many whys at once.
yeah.
Yeah.
And if the why is compelling enough, you
Mhm.
can literally say all that really important stuff that we already prioritized, all that stops, pauses until we
Right.
do this one. Why? Because it became really important.
Yep.
That happens all the time.
Yeah.
It happened earlier this year. Why can't you go in the office? Because you will get sick and die. Or sometimes it's, why do we have to stop and do this compliance program? Because the government just passed a law, and if we don't, we'll all go to jail. Or, why am I dropping everything and working on this new order? Because if we do, we'll get the biggest customer we ever got, and the profitability on this project is insane. Of course, priorities change all the time.
Right.
And it's that compelling why. Where is the value coming from that helps organizations move forward?
Right. In the context of priorities and environment and wow, so why is a great simple word for
Super, super simple.
all that stuff.
Yeah. And then once you get people past that, it's really terse and it's not enough. And then you got to get to these frameworks, these processes. How can I, because you're right. It can be your original question. People can look at creating a value statement saying, yes, but that's gosh darn complicated because you've already got a bunch of ideas in your head and I got to make a number out of something that doesn't have a number. How do I do that?
Right.
Once you get past the understanding that you need to understand a why, then yeah, there's a lot more to talk about.
It's not only education, it's sales in the sense that sales, you are trying to match a need or a problem with a solution, and then your job is to facilitate the discovery, exploration, the connection, and in good faith, be a trusted advisor, facilitator of the value exchange. Same with it.
That's
Right?
a way to do it. You could also just, hey, we need to make a sale happen and let's get as mechanical as I possibly can and slash the price just so I can get something out the door or something like that. I think it's beer conversation, but I mean, it's fair to differentiate between impactful and effective sales and creating relationships between companies that are sustainable and scalable and ethical.
Mm-hmm.
Massively cynical thing I just said.
Yep.
But the way I learned it in school was there's sales and there's marketing, and marketing is really where all that education happens. Do you understand the need? I'm going to listen to what you have to say. I'm going to understand how my product applies to you.
Right.
And once you have that understanding down, then I'm going to hand it over to sales. You guys can come up with a price.
Right. Wow. Crazy. That's great.
Probably just offended all the salespeople listening, so sorry.
Okay, awesome. Great topic. So let's talk about frameworks. So you've got a framework that you mentioned and referred to. Tell us about that.
Yeah, a framework for creating value. It's really understanding what value means. Because there's different stakeholders in every conversation and it can mean different things to different people. And to me, it's really important to identify what it is quickly. The one or two, and usually it's really one, but it's one or two different definitions for, hey, this is a kind of value creation that is meaningful to my organization right now. Could be at the corporate level, could be at the department level, whatever. And then get a nice simple definition of that and tie that to stuff we already understand. And now we can actually start talking because we've latched onto something that you and I both agree is important. So my framework it starts with the stakeholders. I mean, how do you create value for the different stakeholders in the business? And there's three. The first would be shareholders or owners. The second would be your customers. And the third would be employees. Right. Now that last two is, are you trying to create a great company or are you trying to create a great stock? If you're trying to create a great stock, then value around, that's important to the shareholders, the owners, all has to do with financial measures,
Right.
generating revenue, generating, capital efficiency, and, multiple expansion. That's components of something called a total shareholder return. If you're trying to build a great company, you're focused on customers, trying to build good products for them or service them well, or you're trying to build a really effective and satisfied team. So now I'm talking employee engagement. So with those three pieces, shareholders and financial measures, total shareholder return, customers and, product quality and service, and employees and employee engagement. Now, tell me, as we drill into that tad more, what of that is the most meaningful stuff for your company at the end of the day? What's going to prioritize above the others? And now we can latch on to that and say, now with this, say, digital transformation, I'm going to make sure I align to that definition of value.
Right. Wow. Crazy. What do you call your framework?
Don't have one yet. I've like I say, it's I've done a couple of presentations on it. It's the big theme of presentations for 2020, and they're all like documented out of my site, right? Okay. So if you did creating value or value creation, you'd find this. Just go to makerturtle.com and use the search function, or actually just go in the last couple of posts and you'll see them popping up. My definitions, the drill down of each of those types of value.
Okay, here's the link right here.
Yeah, that would be makerturtle.com. I'm actually a proponent of easy to remember domains that you don't have to write down. So the domain for the book is don'tthinksomuch.com. If you can't remember that, don't buy the book.
Yeah, nice. Excellent. Very cool.
Yeah. So how do you, but you talk about creating value and capturing value and stuff like that. How does your thinking and what you're sort of bringing to the world sort of hook into that little framework I just did?
Yeah, so we talked about the communication barrier, communication wall, and then bridging the gap and all that stuff.
Yeah.
I saw that it was a real problem, and I've been doing management consulting for 10 years, right? So yeah. There's always, or not always, but sometimes, and pretty frequently, there's a problem. And the big problem is that the folks creating the value, let's call them IT, right, or the solution provider, yeah. And then the value that they need to communicate in order to sell their solution or be seen as valuable in their job, or get budget because they'd like to do something cool. Yeah. They're not good at it. They don't speak the language of executive leadership, right? They don't speak the language of finance. They don't, because they're so focused on their expertise, right? And I also learned it's not enough to think of that after the fact, that you have a better chance of communicating to these folks who you don't know their language if you bake that in to how you do things. Right? Yep. So I have a framework that puts a layer around whatever governance you have in IT, whatever methodologies, whatever frameworks you're using. Yep. It puts a layer around the entire idea to value process, right? Think light bulb to a stack of bills. Here's a visual right here. I can overlay the visuals. Sure. So here's a visual, and it's basically a clock. And you put this on top of how you're doing things now, and it makes communicating value beautifully simple to your executive leadership team, your customer, your boss, right? To the digital board that's making decisions about budget. It's gorgeous, and really it forces you to kind of bake all that stuff in. At the beginning, when it's just a light bulb, when it's just a value, and then you go all around the clock, and it just.
Yeah. There's a lot of value, I think, in the right kind of visual, and the right kind of visual can take something, air quotes, complicated, and make it easier to understand, because baked into it, You only focus on what adds to the message, but there's even little hidden messages, like the fact that you use a clock or a site, the fact that you use a circle, a clock, and a metaphor like that enforces this idea. You barely have to even say it, that it is a repeating process.
Right.
And you know, taking something that's new and different and putting it in a way that people can understand it, right? Just to get started. Okay, I got my sea legs now. I understand kind of where this is going. Now let's drill into every one of those wedges. That's a massive help. I mean, there's just as much, you know, psychology of communication that you have to be good at, and understanding really effective ways to communicate complexity,
right,
on top of the challenge of, I've got this really complicated, you know, this process I need you to understand. So yeah, I like that approach.
Thank you. So Jim, I got last question for you, and then I'll ask you how people can get a hold of you, because I'm sure they're going to reach out. So if you had, you know, 2 minutes to give some advice to folks who maybe they're embarking on a change project or a transformation, or and they're going to, you know, hit some headwinds and some gaps, what would you tell them?
Well, if you're asking me the question, this is what I tell them. If you're asking me the question because you've heard all the stories before, you know, these kind of projects always go over budget. This is going to cost $1 million. No one in my company's ever done this before. I don't trust the consultants, stuff like that. If that's really in your brain, a really simple thing to do is go find a mentor, go find a coach, call it a project mentor, a project coach, someone who has done this many, many times, that has seen, you know, to them, the consultants, this is something they've done 50 times before, and they know where all the problems are going to come, and they can see trouble coming a mile away. Now, I'm not talking about putting this person on your payroll or putting this person on the project at 40 hours a week. No, it's only a couple hours a week at most. But they can look at the communications, they can talk to the different stakeholders, they can just sanity check how people are talking or planning or not talking or not planning, and force these questions that no one has the guts to do. If you think about it, if you think you're gonna, you know, go over budget by $1 million in 6 months, wouldn't you want to spend $50,000 or $30,000 to just get a little bit of insurance so that doesn't happen? Go find a transformation mentor or a transformation coach, slash your learning, and then listen to them.
That's great. Thank you. And so besides makerturtle.com, you know, how else can people reach out and connect with you?
Well, certainly connect on LinkedIn. I'm a pretty, you know, open person on LinkedIn. The website is makerturtle.com. More information on the book is don'tthinksomuch.com. And yeah, pretty accessible in those ways. So check me out.
Okay, great. Jim, thanks again for being on the show, and I'm sure we'll do this again. This was great.
Absolutely, Paul. I had a great time. Thanks very much.